Aitah for not telling my in-laws about our pregnancy. When my husband's mother called me last week, she didn't even say hello. Just a sharp, shaking voice on the other end of the line. Why did I have to find out from Facebook that my son is having a baby? I froze. The spoon in my hand clattered against the countertop, and for a second, it was like the air was sucked out of the room. Because yes, she was right. She did find out on Facebook, but that wasn't an accident. It was a choice, a deliberate, painful, necessary choice. My husband, Ethan, 33 meters, and I, 31 F, have been married for 4 years. His parents, especially his mom, Susan, have always been complicated. When we first got engaged, she made a scene because I didn't want her to wear white to our wedding. She cried at the rehearsal dinner because Ethan was slipping away. And when we bought our house, she insisted we give her a spare key for emergencies. That key turned into her letting herself in when she felt like it, rearranging furniture, leaving food in the fridge, helping. I really did. I smiled. I bit my tongue. I hosted holidays even when she criticized the tablecloth or the mashed potatoes. But nothing was ever enough. Then last year, when Ethan and I started trying for a baby, Susan made it worse. She began calling weekly to ask if I was pregnant yet. She even started texting me fertility articles and tapes. Once, she left a voicemail saying, "Maybe God hasn't blessed you yet because he knows you're not ready to be a mother." I cried in the shower for an hour that night. Ethan confronted her, but she twisted it. "I'm just worried for her," she said. "You can't take a joke anymore." So when I finally saw those 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test 6 months ago, I felt joy, relief, fear, and then guilt because my first thought was, I can't let her ruin this. Ethan agreed. We decided we would tell our families after the first trimester. But when that came, I still couldn't do it. Every scenario in my head ended with Susan making it about her. Oh. I knew before anyone else she'd brag, or worse, she'd show up unannounced with baby clothes and nursery advice. So we waited. At first, it was just a few weeks, then a month, then 2. My family knew. My mom cried tears of joy. My dad built a wooden cradle. My sister helped plan the gender reveal. But on Ethan's side, we stayed quiet. He felt guilty. I could tell. But he also didn't push me. He said, "I get it. We can tell them when you're ready." And then last week happened. We posted a simple photo, our hands holding a tiny pair of baby shoes, caption coming soon. Baby Miller, August 2026. Within minutes, the likes and comments flooded in. Ethan's dad, who's quieter and more reserved, left a simple, "Proud of you both." But then Susan saw it. She called, not Ethan, but me. Her voice was shaking, angry, on the verge of tears. "Why did I have to find out like this? Do you know how humiliated I feel? Everyone else knew before me. You've stolen my first grandchild from me already." I tried to explain that we weren't hiding it to hurt her, that I needed peace during my pregnancy, that I wanted to enjoy these months without stress. But she didn't want to listen. She said I was cruel, vindictive, and trying to turn her son against his family. She even accused me of trying to erase her from our child's life before it began. When Ethan called her later, she refused to pick up. Instead, she texted him, "Your wife is toxic. I hope the baby doesn't inherit that." Now Ethan's torn. He supports me, but I can see the guilt eating at him. His father called last night, saying Susan's been crying nonstop and refuses to leave their bedroom. He asked if we'd at least consider coming over for dinner to make peace. But I told Ethan I'm not ready for that. I'm 6 months pregnant. I finally found calm after years of walking on eggshells. I can't put myself, or my baby, in that emotional chaos again. Still, a part of me wonders if I crossed a line. Maybe it was wrong to let her find out the same way strangers did. Maybe it wasn't protecting my peace. Maybe it was punishment in disguise. I don't know anymore. Was I really protecting myself or just getting revenge in the quietest way possible? So, Aitah for not telling my in-laws about the pregnancy. Continuation. Dinner for 3 and a storm outside 3 days after Susan's meltdown. Ethan came home from work with that look, the one that said he was trying to hold a dozen thoughts at once and none of them were good. He didn't take off his coat, just stood by the door and said, "Dad wants us to come to dinner this Sunday." I didn't answer right away. He sighed. He says Mom's calmer now, that she regrets how she handled things. I stared at him. Did she say that? Or did he? Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. He said she's been seeing her therapist again, and that she wants to apologize. That word, apologize, hung in the air like smoke. I wanted to believe it. I really did. But every apology Susan had ever given me came wrapped in poison. "I'm sorry you're so sensitive. I'm sorry if you misunderstood my intentions. I'm sorry, but you'll see I was right one day." Ethan reached for my hand. "Babe, I know you don't trust her. I don't either, not fully. But this is my mom. I don't want our kid growing up in a family that doesn't even talk." I stared at our joined hands, at the small gold band on his finger that glinted in the kitchen light, and against every instinct screaming no, I whispered, "Okay." One dinner, Sunday came dressed in thunder. The sky was bruised gray, and rain clung to the windows like condensation on old glass. It was fitting. We drove in silence, the wipers clicking back and forth like a metronome counting down to disaster. When we arrived, the house looked the same as always. To clean, to symmetrical. Every photo frame perfectly aligned. Susan opened the door before we even knocked. She looked smaller somehow, paler. The usual thick layer of makeup was gone, and for a moment, I saw a different woman, one that looked tired. "Come in," she said quietly. No forced smile, no performative hug, just two words that carried more weight than any speech she could have rehearsed. Dinner started awkwardly. Her husband, Mark, tried to fill the silence. "The weather's really coming down. Glad you made it before it got worse." Ethan murmured something about traffic. I just kept staring at my plate. Halfway through, Susan cleared her throat. "I owe you both an apology," she said, voice trembling slightly. I looked up, half expecting the usual sharpness hiding behind the words. But it wasn't there this time. She was staring at her wine glass, twisting the stem with shaking fingers. When I saw that post, she started, then stopped, exhaling shakily. It felt like everyone in the world knew something before I did, and I told myself it was about disrespect. But it wasn't. She finally looked up, at Ethan first, then me. It was about fear. Her voice cracked. "When I had Ethan, I was so terrified. My own mother wanted nothing to do with me after I got pregnant at 19. She told me I'd ruined my life. I promised myself I'd never be like her, that I'd always be there. Too much if I had to be. I thought hovering was low, that controlling things kept people close." Ethan's fork froze midair. I could see tears glinting at the edges of his eyes. Susan continued, softer now. "But the truth is, I've been trying to protect myself from being shut out again. And when I saw that post, it felt like history repeating." She wiped at her eyes, then gave a small, exhausted laugh. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just don't want to miss the chance to meet my grandchild, because I couldn't stop trying to be in control." The silence that followed was heavy, but not toxic. It was the silence of people actually listening. For the first time in years, I didn't feel angry. I felt sad. Sad that all her cruelty had been armor for something as simple and human as fear. Ethan reached out, touching his mother's hand. "Mom, we just wanted peace. That's all." She nodded. "I know. And I made it impossible." Her husband let out a small breath. Relief, maybe, or disbelief that the words were finally out in the open. I said quietly, "I didn't mean to hurt you. I just needed space." Susan smiled weakly. "I think I finally understand that." The thunder outside cracked then, loud enough to rattle the windows, and as if on cue, the power went out. For a second, all we could do was laugh. Nervous, almost hysterical laughter in the dark. Mark lit a candle, setting it in the center of the table. Its flickering light painted the walls in gold and shadow. We sat there, sharing stories, quieter now, gentler. Susan asked about the baby. Not intrusive questions this time, just small ones. "Do you know the gender yet?" "Yes," Ethan said. "A girl." Susan smiled, eyes bright in the candlelight. "I always hoped my first grandchild would be a girl." For once, I didn't feel defensive hearing that. I just smiled back. When we finally got up to leave, the rain had stopped. The air smelled clean, like the world had been washed. Susan hugged me at the door. Not the usual tight, performative embrace. Just a simple, human hug. "Thank you," she whispered, "for giving me another chance." I didn't say anything, but I hugged her back. On the drive home, Ethan reached over, taking my hand. "Thank you," he said softly. For what? For letting her in, even just a little. I looked out the window at the fading clouds, the last drops sliding down the glass. She let me in tonight, too, I said. He smiled. Yeah, she did. 3 months later, when I went into labor, Susan was there, not in the delivery room, but in the waiting area, quietly holding a small whereupon blanket she'd made herself. When she saw our daughter for the first time, she cried, really cried. The kind that shakes your whole body. And for the first time since I married her son, I didn't feel like I was losing anything by letting her be part of our life. Maybe peace doesn't come from keeping people out. Maybe it comes from letting them show who they are without the armor. Continuation. What we pretend to forget 5 years later, our daughter, Leela, is sitting on the porch steps, swinging her legs and humming a song Susan taught her, an old lullaby about stars and sailors and safe returns. Her hair catches the sunlight the same way Athens does. Susan is sitting beside her, knitting again. She's older, thinner, her hands trembling more now, but her eyes, soft and silver blue, light up every time Leela says Grandma. It's quiet, the kind of peaceful quiet I once thought would never earn. But lately, I've started to notice the fractures, the invisible hairline cracks in that peace. Like how Susan still knocks once before entering a room even when invited. Or how Ethan flinches whenever the word boundaries comes up in therapy. Or how, when I scroll through old photos, I see the timeline. The Facebook post that started it all, still sitting there in the depths of the internet, frozen in digital amber. The caption, "We can't wait to meet you, little one." It had been innocent, pure, and yet it had detonated our world once. Sometimes I wonder why I never took it down. One afternoon, while I'm folding laundry, I hear voices coming from the backyard. Leela and Susan. At first, it's just laughter. Leela asking why Grandma's hair is so sparkly and Susan explaining that gray hair is just wisdom escaping. But then Leela asks something that freezes my blood. "Grandma, why didn't you know I was coming? Didn't Mommy tell you?" The silence that follows is so thick I can almost feel it through the window. I hold my breath. Susan's voice comes, soft and uncertain. "Well, sometimes grown-ups keep secrets. Not because they're bad, but because they're scared." Leela giggles. "Were you scared of Mommy?" Susan lets out a small, brittle laugh. "Maybe a little, but mostly, I was scared of being left out again." I stand there, frozen, a half-folded towel in my hands. Because even after all these years, the apologies, the forgiveness, the fragile rebuilding, the core truth hasn't changed. She's still haunted by that moment of exclusion. And maybe, deep down, I am too. That night, Ethan finds me on the porch, sitting in the dark. He sits beside me, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. "She told Leela about the post," I whisper. He sighs. "I know. Mom called me after. She was afraid you'd be angry." I let out a hollow laugh. "Afraid I'd be angry. After 5 years?" Ethan looks down. "She said it wasn't about blame. She just didn't want Leela to grow up thinking secrets are always cruel. She wanted to explain." I rub my temples. "And what did you say?" "Has quiet for a long time. Then I told her she should have asked you first." The ache that's been building inside me finally spills over. I just wanted to move on. But it's like the past won't let go. Ethan puts a hand on mine. "Maybe it's not supposed to. Maybe it's supposed to remind us where we came from." I look at him. Really look at him. His face, a little older, his eyes tired but kind. He means well. He always has. But he doesn't understand. The past doesn't just remind us. It infects us. 2 weeks later, Susan collapses in her garden. A mild stroke, the doctors say. Not fatal, but serious enough that she can't live alone for a while. And suddenly, she's in our guest room. Oxygen tubes, medication schedules, and a faint smell of lavender and antiseptic filling the air. It feels strange, having her here, like the universe forcing me to face something I've been running from. The first few nights, she barely speaks, just stares out the window, her hand occasionally twitching as if she's still knitting invisible stitches in the air. One night, after Ethan falls asleep, I hear her whisper from the guest room, "I never meant to steal your moment." I step closer to the door. She's looking at an old photo on the nightstand, Ethan holding newborn Leela, both of them glowing under hospital lights. "I just wanted to feel needed again," she murmurs. "That's all I've ever wanted. To matter to someone." Her voice cracks. "But I see now maybe I tried too hard to matter. I don't say anything. I can't. Because part of me wants to comfort her. to say you did matter. But another part of me wants to scream, you almost ruined everything just to be seen. So instead, I just stand there in the dark, torn between pity and exhaustion. Weeks pass. She gets stronger. Leela reads to her every night. Children's stories, fairy tales, poems, and something strange begins to happen. I start to see Susan not as the villain of our past, but as a mirror. Her desperation, her control, her loneliness, they're all things I feel myself, especially when I catch Leela playing alone, already needing me less and less. One evening, as I tuck Leela into bed, she asks, "Mommy, when I'm big like you, will you still tell me your secrets?" The question hits like a dagger wrapped in innocence, because I remember being her, small, curious, desperate to understand why adults hide things that could have been said out loud. I stroke her hair. "Only the ones you're ready to hear, sweetheart." She nods thoughtfully. "That's what Grandma says, too." And just like that, the circle closes again, imperfect, fragile, but whole. Susan passes away 3 years later, peacefully, quietly, in her sleep, holding the same whereupon blanket she made the night I met her again. At the funeral, Ethan breaks down completely for the first time in our marriage. He clings to me, sobbing, and I realize something I hadn't before. He never got to see his mother as just human. She was always the storm, the command, the noise. Now she was gone, and in her place, only silence remained. After everyone leaves, I stay behind. The church is empty except for the echo of distant rain. I walk up to her casket and whisper, "I took down the post. It's true. The night before the funeral, I finally deleted it. 5 years late, but still gone. I thought it would make me feel free." I continue. But it didn't. Maybe because it was never really about a post, was it? It was about all of us trying to be seen, and not knowing how to ask for that, without breaking each other. A tear slides down my cheek. Goodbye, Susan. Years later, when Leela is 16, she finds a printed screenshot in a box, the post. She comes to me, frowning. "Mom, why did you delete it? It was beautiful." I smile sadly, because sometimes beautiful things cause pain when they weren't meant to. She studies the paper for a long moment. Then she says, "Grandma would have told you to leave it up anyway." She liked being a little dramatic. We both laugh, and for the first time in years, the memory doesn't sting. It just feels real, flawed, human, ours.